Welcome to the Overwatch League here for the Summer Showdown tournament with me, Avril, and Herix. We're about to head into our second matchup of the day. We just witnessed the Shanghai Dragons getting a 3-0 sweep versus the Guangzhou Charge, and now it's time for Philly to take on the Seoul Dynasty.
Yeah, this was going to be the match that, I mean, granted, in the first series we got a great one, but this was feeling like it was going to be really, I think, the most hotly contested series that we're going to see today. Hopefully that still pans out. But Seoul Dynasty, they're a team that, you know, I think Seoul Dynasty, they're one of the best teams in this region. There's a lot of discussion, though, of course, about are we seeing a little bit of a mirroring effect to midseason madness? I think, you know, certainly as we talk more about them, we could probably temper that at least to a degree. But Fusion, they played spoil to both of these teams, Seoul Dynasty and, of course, Shanghai Dragons. They had those golden stages set up, and Fusion spoiled those. They have, I think, like we talked about already, a little bit of a layer of chaos about them. They can play the spoiler. They also have the potential to have a really high ceiling and take series potentially, not just maps, against some of these teams that are more potentially established, right?
Well, let's meet the opening lineup for the Philadelphia Fusion, and yes, it is MN3 on board currently. As you know, we've had long discussions about what Fusion are trying to achieve in terms of their substitutions. Carpe played the majority of the games of the qualifier, but you know, Fusion really struggled, and since having MN3 back on the starting lineup, they've come back into form. When we look at their final week's worth of performances, both versus Seoul and the win versus Hangzhou Spark, I mean, it definitely does give you a good feeling about Fusion now having this upswing late into the tournament qualifier, into the actual tournament itself, and that's dangerous. And this is why I think Dragons wanted to avoid the Philadelphia Fusion in the opening matchup, because we saw them 3-0 Guangzhou. They're comfortable versus the Guangzhou Charge. Fusion, as you mentioned, it's a mixed bag because their peaks are so high. Look, their lows have been very low as well. When the Fusion really kick into high gear, they can beat anybody here. They can beat the Dragons, they can beat the Seoul Dynasty, and if you are Fusion, I don't think you're even necessarily scared of Seoul today, even though they've had your number in the past. Seoul have beaten the Fusion this year, especially far more than Fusion have been able to beat Seoul just at one time, right? And Seoul have to be careful here because Fusion have only looked to go from strength to strength, but they have to find that level of consistency now. As Seoul Dynasty, we'll take a look at their starting lineup as well. They have been one of our most dominant teams this year. They started as our most dominant team in the Summer Showdown qualifiers, and they're still our second seed for a good reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, again, just to bring up, there's a lot of talk. Okay, are we getting Seoul Dynasty back into kind of that mid-season madness swing, or is this something different? I think we can at least sort of answer that, right? I mean, starting off 12-0 in maps, they had a great start to this tournament, or rather this stage. And now going into this tournament, yes, they did drop a series, but it was against Shanghai. And yes, it was a 3-0, but it was a lot closer. I mean, certainly you look at that series, and I think you could easily tell that the scoreline doesn't necessarily reflect what happens when you look at the film, when you look at how everything actually broke down. And at an individual level, Dynasty still has incredible talent, and it's not like you just lose out on what started you off so hot early on in this stage. I think really this is more of a situation where Philly Fusion can easily play up to some of these teams, and I think we need to start respecting that. And Seoul Dynasty, they took a loss to the Dragons, but again, it's the Dragons, and it was a lot closer than the 3-0 would otherwise suggest.
And I've called this matchup in the past, this rivalry, as a spaghetti bowl in an endearing way. and really in an endearing way, because especially this year, both teams have looked a lot more solid compared to previous, seasons of the Overwatch League, especially for the Seoul Dynasty. Now that they actually have a title under their belt, their first ever title in their organization's history, Fusion still left wanting for that one. That's why the Kickoff Clash final was so great, because somebody had to win, right? It was such a legendary matchup and rivalry leading into it. So it does kind of continue, because these two teams, I think it's 8-5 is the overall record between them, favoring Seoul. But this year so far, 2-1, or rather 3-1. Could they extend that one further? In the past, in 2021, it's gone 2-2, so Fusion were a lot closer that year. But now, with Fusion sort of looking a lot more dangerous, catching up, I mean, that 3-2 victory that Seoul Dynasty got over Fusion, that's one that I think Seoul are probably not too pleased with. They probably would have enjoyed a much cleaner game. And for Fusion, I don't think they can be too upset about that either. They still managed to qualify by beating Hangzhou, and they took a very close game to Seoul, which now they can rectify by beating Seoul, if they can do that. First map going to be Nepal.
Already, yeah. Very interesting start here, I think. Nepal, you know, we look at some of these control maps, and I think a lot of the discussion around this map starter, especially in this meta, is that there's not as much of a difference generally when you talk about the different control maps, but I think that when you start to take into account the playstyle differences that these teams are going to have, especially now that you talk about the mixed bag that Fusion can often be, especially when we've really had limited looks at MN3 being a part of this as well, that could very drastically change the way that Fusion play. I think Seoul Dynasty versus Fusion, getting a good read here in this first map is going to be pivotal for how the rest of this series could go.
Alrighty, we'll see how it breaks down, because the Seoul Dynasty did lose the opening Oasis to Philadelphia Fusion in their last matchup. Again, 3-2 victory for Seoul, but they dropped the opening Oasis. They did pick up the final Busan map, so Control going both ways, 1-1 apiece. Fitz starting out here on the Sojourn, or not the Sojourn, the Ashe rather. It's going to be Sojourn for MN3. Smurf already taking a bit of damage. Both teams have now popped the commanding shouts. Seoul Dynasty kind of locked up in the lobby though. They need to break on out, and out they come. For Zest, both Genji's trying to trade some damage, and Zest falls first.
Looks like Fusion can actually back off here at least a little bit, and they need to. They don't want to give away too much ult charge. I mean, once you lose a fight like that, you lose control early, and you're also kind of giving this slow push over to the Dynasty where they're going to get even more of a lead here, on top of the fact that they're playing the Ashe. So getting set up defensively here is going to bode well for them as things move forward. I think that's probably the main concern if I'm Fusion.
Like you need to have good sight lines for Fitz, as well as, you know, defendable angles. I think the difficulty of playing Ashe in this meta is that it's a lot easier to flank an Ashe and just get on top of an Ashe, whereas, you know, Sojourn has a lot more to play with in her kit. I think the disruptor shot, importantly, will kind of make things difficult for a Genji, and also the burst potential of the Sojourn is so much higher as well. So Fitz might be playing a little bit uphill if he's not too careful. Vindame gets away with his life. Zest didn't have the dash available to go on in to find the execution. Point though might just get capped over, is contested. Have to be careful about that one. Soul can't let that one go away for free. Blades should be coming up soon as well. Stalker on 95. Stalker already just gets a kill on the Fixer, so it might not even matter here. Prophet needs to be a little bit careful to not die with the rally. Seoul Dynasty 3 versus 2. Okay, that got a little bit tricky. MN3 popped up with 2 shots there, Herix, but it will still go the way of Seoul Dynasty. They retain the cap, retain most of their players alive. MN3 got tricky, but Seoul Dynasty don't lose.
And it's interesting to see how these fights take place too, because this is certainly a much slower tempo than what we just had in our previous matchup. We're seeing pressure definitely getting placed down upon Dynasty, but they're not utilizing a lot of their resources to stabilize. They're allowing their team to kind of sit at about half HP, and then once Fusion commits, that's when they do as well.
Okay, here's the committal now. MN3 going in. Bob responds to the opposite end. I believe just got booped back slightly, and now booped off the map. Superior will just take care of the Bob. Goodbye. Stalker, low HP, wants to pull play. They're playing patiently here, they being Seoul Dynasty. They still have point control, but now the swaps and the trades, rather, will come on through. 4 versus 3. Blade to save the day. Zest needs to get something good down out of here, because with Fixer gone and Engod dead, there's just no supports, and it's final fight territory. Seoul Dynasty might just get a 100-0 finish as Zest. He needs to do a lot more on that blade, but he just can't, because the supports of Seoul Dynasty keeps everybody up. Final rampage from Smurf goes across. Fixer, I believe that was an Ajax. Unlucky. And 100-0 has been found, but even had Fixer dropped in the sound barrier, I don't know that it would have made a difference.
Yeah, desperate investment there for Fusion. I mean, forced because of the fact that Dynasty was just on top of them. As soon as we saw Dynasty win out that neutral engagement, they were just easily in control, and I think a lot of that certainly determined by the fact that their cooldown usage is just so effective against this playstyle that Fusion are trying to go for, where they're out pressuring, constantly trying to find that opening. You can see Zest trying to invest in finding that execution like we saw between Choi and Who Are You, but Dynasty, they're the team that is playing that disengaged style, where they're looking to absorb that pressure, and then once Fusion commits, they still have resources, they still have cooldowns, despite their health bar not seeming like they do. They do.
And Fitz was well protected there as well. He had 0 deaths, as well as Smurf having 0 deaths on that first opening round, 100-0. So, you know it's difficult for you when your Ashe is kind of struggling in that matchup, is not being defended well. But Fitz was just kind of free-firing for the most part, which is what you want out of Fitz in that specific situation. into our second round though. Bunch of damage being taken by Seoul Dynasty, but returning the case, and look at that. I mean, despite Stalker dashing in for the kill to aim god, it will be Fitz finding him as well as Zest. And once again, the Seoul Dynasty getting a very early cleanup onto the Philadelphia Fusion and barely a response. I think Stalker's the only death so far, and he'll remain the only death in the first fight.
Really good start here for Seoul Dynasty, and I think that's, again, why I try to play down the notion that Seoul Dynasty is for some reason fizzling out, because we saw them take one loss against the Shanghai Dragons, and they dropped the map as well. Well, so this is still Seoul Dynasty, and they're here to stay. It seems like they're still one of those top teams in this region, but Philadelphia Fusion, they have to turn up the heat right here and right now. It's another potentially neutral fight, obviously positional control to Dynasty, but has to find a pick here, Fusion, to be able to move forward.
Yeah, and it's been, you know, 130% worth. I'm including Sanctum as well, where Fusion haven't won a fight yet, so this entire opening has been pretty dangerous. Saw Stalker deflect the railgun shot, but for MN3's sake, thankfully not back into his own head. But a struggling here for Fusion to be able to walk on forward. They really are trying to rely on MN3 to maybe find an opening, and there it is. They get what they wanted. Seoul Dynasty now down by 1. Philadelphia Fusion can finally walk on 4. Can they get more? They will get more, but Zest gets punished. So it's still a 4v3. Support ultimate's about to come online. MN3 converts onto a further member, and MN3 is just popping off. 3 kills so far, make it 4. The rails have been phenomenal here. MN3, he's got about to have the overclock already.
And remember too, MN3 came in kind of late in the season as well. Got injected in here to try to find some other way for the Fusion, and it seems to have worked. I mean, between MN3 and Zest, they feel so fluid together, like they really have something there, and now we can see in control, especially with the overclock. Can they find picks against the double support ult that Dynasty have?
We'll find out, because the first couple of rails are now firing on through, and they really want Smurf down. Shout's already been used. Profit trying to keep the players up via the rallies. Extra sound barrier still being held on to. Vindane wants to save that one for Zest, who does take a bit of damage, and MN3 just deletes Profit. Goodbye out of the server. 5 versus 4. MN3's rails continue to find value in this round so far on Shrine. The Seoul Dynasty, they look like they're just going to back on out. They need 5.
They have to. Profit down. On top of that, a big trade for Fusion. They're getting back in control here. Great investment, great pick there as well.
This is just, it's never ending. MN3 just keeps piling on the damage of the Seoul Dynasty. And the Seoul Dynasty consistently at a 4 versus 5 in these last couple of fights and engages. And look at the economy as well here. Xfury is about to get this rampage. It's about to be 4 lights online. Look, Seoul also have about 4 ultimates coming in. But unless they can get past MN3 on the rotation, it's just looking bad for Seoul. They have plenty to play through here, so opportunity on board. MN3 down. Fitz gets his revenge. It's been such an important member to get down early. Fixer low HP, still waiting to pop the sound barrier. Vindame already popped. Smurf coming through the rampage in just a hot second, and Zest has his blade shut down. Stalker still slashing. Takes down Aimgun. No more rally available. Fixer did in that fight as well. No chance to pop the sound barrier, and the Seoul Dynasty off the back of killing MN3 early from Fitz's rail will get the job done.
Huge win for them, obviously getting that first pick. That's pivotal. It set things up so well for them, because now you talk about the reward. Well, Fusion has sound barrier, but they invested 3 ultimates into a fight that they then lost, and now Dynasty, if they win this next one, that could clear it. They could go 2-0 here as long as they remain vigilant and composed.
And this one looks so much better for the Fusion, but still you have to get past Seoul in a position of defending here with Smurf coming up towards the rampage. Again, Fixer held on to sound barrier, didn't get to use it last fight. Could be important here. That's another deflected rail, but again doesn't go into MN3. It's Fitz to pull the overclock. Fixer just sound barriers, can't afford to lose it there. Smurf can now wait for the rampage to find maximum value. It does only get the 1. I believe he was booped in there, but they can still get that kill. Profit and Smurf are low HP. Fury as well quite low, but it's Zest falling first. Vindame gets that kill. Seoul Dynasty gets 99%. They can finish this one right here and now. MN3 trying to put a stop to Seoul. MN3 trying to save the day. Extra rally from Profit to come on through. It's low HP for Seoul. MN3 though, he's struggling to find these kills. He's struggling to find the picks, and Fitz is now in towards his face. Seoul Dynasty, they're about to get this one. If Fusion can't find any responses, they can't even touch. They can't even touch. Zest tried, didn't get there.
Unfortunate way for Fusion to kind of fizzle out on that first map, but either way, I think they have found a way to adapt to this. I think a lot of that is done through MN3 just being able to click people's heads, much the same like we saw from, Lip in the last series. But either way, anything that you can find, any value that you can attribute to getting some fight wins under your belt and actually establishing yourself in this series is something you're going to do. And I think that's a big reason why Fusion invested into MN3 and even more so invested in him now more than ever, because he's able to turn the tides of a series just slightly. But still, of course, we have to kind of set expectations as they should be, and that Dynasty, they're still a top team, and they've established that yet again.
Yeah, despite MN3's heroics on that second round, right, it just wasn't quite enough. That I think 4K from MN3 was one of the better lines of, sequences in terms of highlight from a Sojourn play that we've seen so far. It was just really beautiful to see. But you need a lot more from the Fusion. You need the rest of the players being able to match up there as well. Very slow game, very slow start for Zest, who you normally expect to be in that carry position. Have to see if Zest and the rest of Fusion can bounce back on map number 2. That will be their pick as well. But for now, we'll take a bit of a break. See you soon. Well, I have some good news here, Herix. Fixer did, in fact, not Ajax on that first round, but unfortunately the bad news is it still ends up in a 2-0, so it doesn't really help either way, whether the beat lands or not there for the Philadelphia Fusion. A rough play to start, I believe, was 100-0 on Sanctum. A lot closer on that second round, 80+ accumulated. I think maybe even 90 there for Fusion, but, you know, MN3 can only do so much for the team.
Yeah, I think certainly the rest of Fusion's going to have to step up, and I think they're more than capable of doing just that. As we've seen already, this is a varying degree of pacing and tempo. Obviously, in our last series, we saw things really, really high octane, just running each other down, trying to find those opening picks. Initially, things were slowed down. Seoul really kind of helped to dictate things in that fashion. Of course, a lot of that comes down to the fact that they were simply just using fits on an Ashe, so they needed to do that. But then once it came down to the mirror, a lot more chaotic, and I think that's where Fusion, once they start to establish some better comfort in this series as a whole, and they start getting a download on, okay, what is Dynasty doing well? Because they've been doing it well throughout the entirety of this stage. What can we do to start mitigating some of the efforts that they're doing? And then also, how can we enable Zest in particular? Because obviously MN3 is doing what he's doing already. Now it's time to get Zest involved again, as we know he can.
I've got a couple of stat lines as well from that previous map that I think are quite a bit telling. MN3 obviously did, as you'd expect, he got the largest amount of final blows on his team by quite a fair margin, by the way. It goes 10 for MN3, and then 2 for Zest, and then, you know, 1 for Fury, etc. So it's like 10 and then 2. It's quite a large gap there. So Zest, unfortunately, just couldn't quite get too much done on the Genji, but also across the board, the damage was there for Philly Fusion. They only did about 260 less damage as an entire team of 5 compared to Seoul Dynasty, who only head by that amount. And yep, they were down by 9 final blows. So the Seoul Dynasty were ahead by 9 total final blows, while only being ahead by 260 damage overall. That really says to me that Fusion kind of struggled to clean up members there. There was also a lot more healing done by the Seoul Dynasty, so they're low HP. They're in a position where they could die, but then they get healed back up, they disengage well, and they don't lose members.
Yeah, I think a lot of that damage just came in pre-fight for Fusion before everything really could stick, whereas Dynasty, again, they held their cooldowns, they were looking for that pivot, and they're doing that again here as well. You can see them kind of posturing up onto the high ground, and again, utilizing fits on the Ashe. They want Fusion to come forward at them.
This is really a lot of Fitz Ashe that we're seeing today, and I think Hollywood, you'll probably remember for 2021, was a lot of Fitz Ashe finding value as well, so replicating some of that performance through. So Dynasty, though, already on towards the point. Fusion are giving up a lot of space here. Fury, obviously low HP, had to back on out, the shot expended. Vindame could be the first target, no one cleaning him up. There it is, Fix will find a very wayward headshot, but you take those, you take this for sure. It's 1 tick, regardless for Seoul, whether it's win or lose. But they haven't been quite cleaned up. Sorka will get a trade onto Aim God. Won't be enough for Seoul to get further than that, though. Fusion have the player advantage, and they will capitalize on said player advantage. But like I also mentioned here, there is 1 tick given away.
And of course as well, I mean, you talk about shout timings. That's one of the harder things to see, because one of the best ways to see it is if you could just barely make it out in the top left or top right of your screen, or you hear it. But that really favored Fusion there. They had a great timing mid-fight that they were able to just establish their dominance once they got slightly ahead, and it helped stabilize them as well. Now, looking forward, I'm expecting Dynasty to kind of temper that aggression just a tad. Remember, they still have fits on the Ashe, so they want to poke out Fusion as much as possible.
And they nearly got the second tick here as well. Fusion have to respond very quickly. Zest to build the blade. They'll have the earlier sound barrier as well. That's very important because Vindame is far away. Stalker is still a reasonable length away as well from receiving his own ultimate. Fusion can pull the trigger or pull the blade at any point here, and they might be forced to 2 ticks. They'll give it away. Fusion just giving the objectives to the Seoul Dynasty. Push does need to come to shove here. Double rallies pulled on through. Smurf is the leader. What's going on there? Smurf went very far forward, and Seoul could not support him up. MN3 takes down Fitz, and with the blade coming through, Zest will finally get a kill. It's enough for the Philadelphia Fusion to win another fight with Heurix. A second tick given away.
Yeah, I think Fusion certainly would like to have at least that back, but you can see them pushing up a little bit farther forward. They know that Seoul Dynasty is building some of their ultimates, but they may not be quite there yet, so it's time to go.
Fitz is low, Fitz is down. MN3 pulls that trigger on the overclock straight away. This is a bold strategy coming through from the Philadelphia Fusion. They want to get very aggressive, and MN3 unfortunately goes a little bit too far up. He was out of the LOS of all of his healers, and Smurf will now claim Aim God as well. This is Philly being punished. I think Seoul will cap from here. Absolutely too many players from Philly down, and this is the disengage start. And look, by the way, the ultimates here, Seoul don't even have to ult. They already got 2 ticks. They're going to cap.
All just came from an overextension there, and I think that's why we, when we talk about Philly Fusion, it's really hard to get a good feed on where they're at, because when they're playing well, they're playing very well. But sometimes there's just those little things that happen that other teams can take advantage of, like Seoul Dynasty, and of course, like Shanghai Dragons as well.
I just don't think you can afford to kiss the spawn doors there, right? I mean, MN3 biting a lot more off than he can chew, for sure. And if you are Fusion, if you're going to lose A, you want to burn ultimates off of Dynasty. Here you're going to get another first pick. Brilliant to see. Seoul Dynasty, though, send out the Bob. This is now opportunity for Seoul to just buy a bit of time, regroup together. Okay, it costs you the entire Bob, but it makes sure that no one else dies. Okay, I'm lying, actually, because Zez just kills. I was going to say 2, but one of them is the Bob. I don't know how Stalker got caught there, but it's enough. And now Seoul Dynasty are left hurting a lot, because originally they spend the Bob to disengage without dying. Now they just die anyway.
Yeah, that's a huge win, actually, for Fusion. It reestablishes their control, on top of the fact that I don't know where popular opinion lies on this, but Bob actually a really solid ult right now in this meta, genuinely. And to be able to pull that out, still get the fight when you don't have to invest your resources to be able to do that, that's great. Now you can start matching going forward. Yeah. They're down to 2 minutes. It looks better for Fusion now.
I got a lot of mixed feelings about Bob, because you can sort of displace the Bob quite easy with multiple different boops here, even the Jagged Blade. And also Soju can use the Bob to either burn it or just charge a rail, right? You can just charge a rail off the Bob, which is pretty good. In either case, yep. Rampage, Sound Barrier to counter, probably look for the rally next. Sound Barrier from Fixer now to match, and Stalker's turn to Blade. 0 targets are not very rich in terms of a target environment. In Seoul Dynasty, they have a very good Rampage that gets Fury down. Aim got low, but again, the extra rally healing will come on through. It's not enough to save Fixer, and the Fusion are falling over. They just can't quite do enough damage to secure kills. That's been the story of our opening map in Nepal, and now deep into Hollywood. Smurf, critical HP, doesn't die. Seoul Dynasty, they continue pushing forward.
Not a lot of time, though, left, so of course, when you look at this and you see Philly Fusion has Zest with an opportunity to actually step into the spotlight. I mean, how much have we talked about him already and the fact that he needs to stand out the way that we're used to seeing him do it? Well, this is the best opportunity he's going to have. No ults online for Dynasty. They're probably already going to have their best shout. They do.
Yeah, the shouts already have been in play there. Fury gets smurfed down, so with a bit of help from Zest's Blade, the damage has been good. That's the only kill they have so far, but it might be the only kill they need. They do push back the Philly Fusion, fix a great boop onto Fitz, will secure a secondary, and this will allow the Fusion to walk on forward. Stalker's life is obviously going to go forfeited. This stage, Fusion could actually go for the spawn camp if they want to, but they'll refrain. I think part of that reason might be because the payload is very far up.
Yeah, I think if you go for it there, you might afford yourself an opportunity to still go for a contest, but instead they like the high ground here. They can control the drop, they can control the timing of this fight, and I think that's more important to them, especially given the fact that MN3 does have his ult. Oh, they've lost Fixa.
That's not what you want to see. Fusion's defense now solely relies on the success of this overclock. They'll allow a bit of space to be given away. Fixer will return. They desperately need a 5 versus 5 here, and MN3 biding his time to pull through the ultimate. The Bob also comes to play. Stalker, he gets another opening pick. He got Fixer before, gets MN3 now, but it's so much more impactful to kill MN3. 5 versus 4, no more overclock available. Fury falls as well, and the rest of Fusion will get cleaned on up. Bob even making an appearance in the kill feed, and Seoul get the cap. Stalker with 2 important kills to lead the fight.
And this one kind of feels stolen away from Fusion as well. I mean, they did such a good job in those first 2 sections of the map, but now Dynasty are moving into the final phase here. And granted, yes, the time bank doesn't look great, but it seems like they're doing their best work when their backs are against the wall and the overtime wick is burning down.
Yeah.
Of course, you look at the Blade here, available for Stalker, and Fusion, the timing does not look good for them here. They're not going to have the sound barrier to answer, but they're going forward anyways.
Well, Fitz could die here. It does get saved by the Cookie, as we saw from long distance. Could see a Prophet, who now goes down. It's both Brigidas on the floor so far, but it's so much more damage done by Stalker. Look at the beauty of this Blade. He just gets the damage through, and Fusion can do nothing about it. They already lost their healers. Vindame getting active in the kill feed. It's a full 5-0 wipe in Seoul Dynasty off the back of a single Blade. Continue pushing through unimpeded.
Snowballing through now. I mean, momentum is in Seoul's favor, and on top of that, they were able to bide enough time here with 20 seconds left. They have both their support ults. They could go 1-1, but they have to find kills quick. Otherwise, you give that respawn advantage to Fusion.
Well, Vindame has to be careful here because both Rampage and Blade are available. Here comes the Blade now. Zest needs a lot of kills here. Soundbarrier has been popped by both of the Lucio players. Fury now climbs on through Smurf. Basically has Rampage cancelled. Yes, in fact, it is cancelled by the Rampage of Fury. It's final fight territory anyway. Soul try to do all that they can, but with Fusion's format, I believe, Rampage by Fury, and some extra damage done by Zest there as well. Seoul Dynasty will finally lose a critical fight that ends the push. However, Herix, take a look at that payload positioning.
Yeah, not bad. I mean, it's basically the end of the map, just a couple of meters away. So, yeah, they weren't going to finish with any time left, but hey, at least they get pretty much all the way there, and certainly feel for the Dynasty there, especially Vindame had an impossible task dealing with 2 ultimates that he was basically in charge of trying to deal with. Not ever going to go in your favor. Fusion could kind of space those out a little bit, especially given the fact that they know that they have their respawn right behind them. If they lose one player, they can still turn that back around and get the award of just getting value out of one of those ults at the very least, but they got both. So that does well for them at least, but they have at least now a good spot to go, okay, we had a great defense. Seoul Dynasty, yeah, they snuck a couple through us, but we look great in the team fights, and all we have to do is complete the map and we can take this one home.
Yeah, well, maybe that'll be easier said than done. You know, plenty of teams have fallen by the weight of the pressure of we just need to complete the map. And Seoul Dynasty, they look like they nearly did not even cap A. You know, there are still some mixed feelings about how that A-point defense could have gone for Fusion had they not played risky. I don't mind that they ambushed Seoul Dynasty by sort of hiding the corner there, but taking it all the way to the spawn, certainly not what you want to see out of Fusion, and maybe that could have been an 8-point hold. Who knows? Well, that would be an alternate timeline and the multiverse that we'll never sort of get to see. Fits on the Ash for the defense here as well. So, again, Seoul lost a lot of time on A. They're going to need to burn a lot of time off of Fusion as well because, you know, easier said than done to cap, but still very capable. I think this is a winnable map for Fusion.
Yeah, all about, for Dynasty at least, just controlling. Just buy time, play this like you did on Sanctum. That's what they want to accomplish here. That's why they have Fitz back on the Ash for this objective here.
Fury's in a lot of pain here. He might actually just go down. That's critical HP for Fury indeed. Shout being extended here. Stalker is actually being caught. He's gone right in deep, but it's a 1-for-1 trade so far. 2 for 2 now. Seoul Dynasty saw 3 alive, but they have given up the point. Fusion is starting to cap. They got the first tick underway. Fusion can't afford to chase these kills, so we're about to have some respawners coming back, and both teams have pretty equal respawn distances here. And as Seoul Dynasty regroup, they will stop the second tick from coming in, and both teams back on out.
Yep. Of course, Seoul Dynasty just loving the fact that they got their Junker Queen out of that situation and stole the kill onto Fury as well so that they could reestablish their positioning here at least a little bit. But the big thing is that Fitz, I don't know if he's really in the greatest spot right now as things are already breaking out. They're diving for him.
Oh. Low HP members, it's the supports that MN3 wants, but Stalker finds his kill first and foremost. Now Stalker continues, 2-for-1 trade so far. Fusion down to very critical members here. Fixer will save the Sound Barrier. They know they lost this fight for sure. Fury at least takes down Fitz, but I don't know if there's going to be a valuable enough timing for the Philadelphia Fusion to actually use that. I'm pretty sure that Fitz will be on his way back and well before either Fixer and Fury can regroup their team. So it's a good effort, but this time Seoul Dynasty get a far cleaner fight win.
You can see as well, Seoul Dynasty have that Bob coming up, and I mentioned before that I like the value in that ult, and this is one of the reasons why. If you can send that onto the back wall, and I think, Fusion actually, I think, expect this to happen, so they're going the back route through the alleyway and might deny some of the value here by just LOSing it. It's gone.
The bombs in Narnia currently is just completely out of the map, and well, maybe the Bob's out of there, but the Fusion trying to rush into the Seoul Dynasty. It's still a 5-0 sweep, and by the way, Bob being the only ultimate. They don't even need to use any other ultimates, so we'll just forget about the Bob, because, well, the Fusion did, and Seoul did Seoul.
And I mean, incredibly smart rotation still, though, because they could very easily use some of the map geometry, some of those boxes on the backside of the point to just mitigate the value there. Unfortunately for them, they just ran headfirst into their own death. And now Seoul Dynasty, you look at Fitz, he just used Bob. He's up at 50%. The rest of the ults are still online, so Dynasty kind of got away for free on that.
I think the other value of the Bob is it does charge fairly quickly off the back of Dynamites, and we'll see if that happens again very quickly as Rally comes on through. MN3 trying to find value on this overclock, but currently isn't able to select any targets. Smurf is at least low, but not dead, so the Stalker running on in. Stalker does not get saved by anything. The Vindame Sound Barrier comes in fairly late, fixes Sound Barrier first, obviously to block out the blade, and Zest is still alive. He's still killing. He's got everybody now. Has Fitz in his sights as well. Just another okay, apparently not. Fitz gets how does Fitz win that 1v1? It might not be enough for the Seoul Dynasty to hold on, as it's just Vindame alive. A Fusion, the extra sound barrier from Fixer, Vindame not saving Stalker. I think that could have been the difference.
Timing key there, though. I mean, Seoul Dynasty not going to have short spawn, so they're not going to be able to move up to that high ground. Instead, Zest can actually take that away from them, at least for the time being. Allow Fusion to get through this choke pretty safely here, again, as long as they're not getting picked out. But once again, Bob coming online, Fusion did a great job of rotating away. They still died, but as long as they kind of keep that at the forefront of their mind, they can do that again here. There's a lot of opportunity to line of sight away from the Bob.
Oh! Yeah, that's one opportunity right there. How about just delete the Fitz Ash before the Bob can even become a factor? Now, Seoul Dynasty can just disengage here, or rather they can just play the high ground, wait for Fitz to come on back. Fusion can't really aggress on. Zest will do a little bit of the extra damage via the dash. When Fitz comes back, though, that's when the fight really starts, and I think Bob will need to almost pop that instantly.
3, great position, working the flank. There's the Bob invested. Fusion, can they get away?
Doesn't look like it, at least not for God. Maybe the rest of them could still make it through. It's an expensive way to regain payload control, but again, we discussed this in our previous series. I think it ends up being worth it. Bob doesn't take too long for Fitz to build on up. And using the Bob straight away means it allows the Seoul Dynasty to instantly engage. Fusion don't want a bar of it. They lose a player. They will go back and regroup. Now a bit of a high ground stalemate, as Fusion have to be the ones to break the stalemate. They need to get the push on again. And it's Fury with the Rampage where Smurf doesn't have it.
Oh, I love the way that Zest is working this as well. This is just Zest's position alone means that Fusion can force their way across the bridge and push down Dynasty. They're forced onto the low ground. Fusion can now take this fight more aggressively and with at least a little bit of favor, but I think they want to wait for their sound barrier. That's what their go button is going to be. Once Fixa gets that, they can make another contest.
And Vindame is 21% off here as well. Prophet's going to have to pop this as a pre-rally at any point now, as MN3 is going to force the issue. This is the overclock to find the kills required. Smurf got quite a bit of HP damage and all that now promptly be taken down. Seoul Dynasty have so far not been able to really respond. Stalker gets just the one. And despite Prophet actually piling in the rally, it does not help the Seoul Dynasty enough. Fusion off of MN3 pushing on in, and Fury using the Rampage. They get the required kills. Maybe not looking for a few stragglers left behind. Seoul have all regrouped. Nobody got a bad spawn.
Yeah, I think one of the main things I'm looking for here with Zest having this blade, with the positioning here from Dynasty, wanting to have an explosive start to this fight. Instead, Fusion back away, but again, rally with the blade, Seoul Dynasty, it's all about forcing Zest's deflect. If they can do that, they can mitigate the pressure there, they can push through the overhealth supplied by the rally, and Dynasty can regain control defensively.
Comes above now, blade as well, coming through from a Stalker, and it's just all kills the way of the Seoul Dynasty. Not a single response. Smurf gets 3 of them, and Fusion could be a risk of being spawn camped here. I mean, usually when you see a defensive team kind of just get a 5-0 wipe, they can play very aggressively, and Seoul's positioning, it's right up there. It's not quite kissing the spawn doors, but it is, you know, quite a fair bit up.
And I think with that fight there too, yes, they give away some of their opportunity to get the deflect out from Zest, but they still have sound barrier to answer. They still have Rampage coming up as well, so Dynasty, I think, still in a good position despite utilizing 2 of their offensive weapons in that last fight.
And this is where Fusion come in and reclaim all the space, right? Put the pressure onto Stalker, who got low HP there. Zest would have probably gone deeper, but he got hit by Dynamite. So the stalemate continues, but Fusion are okay with this one because they are the ones pushing up, and we remind ourselves they just have to finish the map here. There is not going to be a time bank. 43 seconds to get it done. The sound barrier is available for Vindame to counter out Zest's blade. Zest has to be the linchpin here to get the party started. We are getting into the position now where Fusion have to pull the trigger. And here it comes. Zest's half HP. Smurf with the Rampage on the opposite end. Zest is currently slashing a lot of air with Fury down. Seoul have all but locked up this fight. Time is getting critical here. Fusion have to regroup quickly.
going to make it a little bit easier for MN3 because he's going right back to the spawn, and now Sound Barrier available, but
who's touching?
It's not going to be an offensive weapon, and someone does have to touch because, look, Rampage is still going to be there, so Fusion are not going to get much value out of Sound Barrier.
Zest is recalled, so they got to go for this now. They have the basic Sound Barrier and go for it. Zest is down, and they can't quite get... Okay, there is going to be a touch involved. The Rampage cuts through all of Philadelphia Fusion, or at least two important members there. Sound Barrier to block it through a bunch of damage. Profit is keeping the team healthy, and the Fusion caught between going for the objective, trying to stay alive. Zest getting taken down early, and the final fight is all but gone. The chances of the Fusion have been wiped out of Hollywood, and we said it right from the start there. Philadelphia Fusion finishing the map, easier said than done. 40 seconds left to try and get it done, but it was just too difficult. The Zest Blade versus Vindame Sound Barrier fight had to go the way of Fusion. It did not, and then they were caught in spawn.
All came down to ultimate efficiency there as well towards the end. It felt like, and the timing that we saw between those two as well, especially when you consider the fact that Seoul really kind of had a rocky start to their attack as well. I mean, remember, they kind of finished the map. I mean, certainly a couple meters away, but they were right there. But Fusion was just so on the defense as well. I mean, they almost held on point A, they almost held on point B, and it really came to a close at the end on point C, and Fusion just couldn't get that same distance covered. I think they want that one back in a big way.
Yeah, I go back towards the A, right? The overextension. Who knows what could have happened in the multiversal timelines, but we won't get to discover that. The good news for Fusion is there is still another map to be played. They are still in a position to pick that one. We'll have to find out what that is after this break. Welcome back to the Overwatch League here. Seoul versus Fusion, currently 2-0 up. For the Seoul Dynasty match point has been locked up here, and for the Philly Fusion, you know, it's a competitive map. Not so much on to Nepal, especially on that first round, but as we moved along, it has been more and more competitive, but not quite enough to get Fusion a map just yet.
Yeah, not just yet. Certainly looking a lot better over time while we progress through this series. I think Fusion, they could be very much, you know, moments away at this stage, and certainly as we progress forward now where we're at 2-0, I mean, every map that we see from here on out, whether it be one or several, is going to be still Fusion's map selection, and I think that certainly can help them along the way. But still, you're down 2 maps. Now you're talking about a reverse sweep, and I know I shouldn't say it out loud or it won't happen, but either way, Fusion, while they do look good, it just is a little bit short at this stage against Dynasty.
And I feel like it's, you know, it sort of betrays the previous result a little bit as well, because when you look back at the regular season game in the final week, despite Fusion losing to Seoul, it was a 3-2 win for Seoul, meaning that Fusion actually had the 2 maps in there, and they actually had the 2 maps first. It was 2-1 after Circuit Royale, which will, by the way, also be our next map coming up, selected by the Philly Fusion. Fusion were at a match point versus the Seoul Dynasty in that, you know, Week 18 game. And they sort of allowed 2 maps to go the way of Seoul Dynasty, and they lost the ability to win that series. And here, it's just a very different feeling, right? Because instead of a commanding position and a leading position for Fusion, they are so far down.
One thing I do like about this map, though, especially given the fact that it's Fusion's choice to actually take us here, is the fact that on this map, it feels like, while more often than not, we're seeing Genji's kind of command the team, at least to a degree. Obviously, main tank is probably the most dominant factor of this composition, but Genji plays a very pivotal role. However, on this map, you're seeing a little bit of the hit scan DPS role, or rather the Sojourn specifically, get a little bit of an increase in value, and especially when you have a player like MN3 doing what MN3 has been doing, I think that does help you out at least a little bit, to have MN3 be able to kind of impact this match more so than he is already even.
And he has been, I think, the primary carry of the Philly Fusion so far in this particular matchup, right? Obviously was the case on Nepal by a big margin, as described from the statistics outlined after that map concluded. Fitz will, I think, predictably start out on the Ashe here. Whether he remains on the Ashe will be questioned. He is the kind of player that likes to continue playing the Ashe, but at the same time, you know, we've seen both Lip and Jimmy, they start on the Ashe and then swap over towards Sojin. Breaking past the opening spawn hold is what's important, and a bunch of Philly members are already quite low here. Smurf, though, taking a bunch of damage. He's probably target number 1 and already cleaned up.
Should be nice and efficient here for Fusion. One thing, though, that they want to make sure of is that when we do see players like Aim God, for example, getting low like we saw in that last fight, if things go the way of Aim God falling out, that means Fusion has to back up and they have to give up this spawn camp that is certainly going to be testing Dynasty. So Fusion, they can continue to look for these picks, but they have to make sure that they stay composed, especially in their backline. That's key.
Well, Fusion can't really afford to lose any members here, right? So that opening shout that's already been used by Fury helps keep them healthy, maybe even disengage. Fury, though, still just really far up. He couldn't quite get away. They do trade out the 2 Junker Queens, but this is still, I would say, going the way of Seoul Dynasty. Seoul might lose this fight, but the respawns matter here. Seoul are going to get their respawns very quickly, and they're going to break out.
And that's exactly what I was kind of getting into, right? The fact that they did lose some bodies, the respawn is right there. Fusion should have to back up here, which means that Dynasty, while they didn't win the fight, they still get the value of winning the fight, which is pushing that payload forward, starting to progress this cart, and getting into a better place for them to fight, because you definitely don't want to be attached to your spawn at any stage of this map.
We'll still say that's a fairly, I think, successful spawn camp from Fusion, given about a minute 30 was shaved off the clock. You also have a very early sound barrier. Now Prophet and Vindane low gets cleaned up. There it is, M3 and Zest, the 2 DPS players of the Fusion, getting active in the kill feed, and Stalker should be falling next. And the spawn camp can continue now, because here's the other problem here, is if you do win this 5-0 on the defense, you can just walk forward.
Yeah, now you can go right back to everything that Seoul Dynasty doesn't want to be a part of. You can go back and spawn camp yet again, start taking resources from Dynasty, where, you know, even if Dynasty wins a fight, if they invest a resource early to win it, then they don't have that for the card.
They have to bob, and they do bob, and now the sound barriers and the support ultimates, Aim God might have to pop rally here as well, start to come on through. It's very hard, though, I think, to pop extra ultimates if you have Fusion, because if you try and Blade, Dynasty can just go back on their spawn, so you have to be considerate of what you use here as the Fusion. You are trying to get some ultimates out of Seoul Dynasty, and one of those will now be the Blade. Stalker's trying his best. The rally from Aim God is keeping most players alive, but Stalker doesn't care. He'll even get the Mega Pack. He'll get his third kill in the fight now, looking for 4 and 5. Smurf cleans it up, and Fusion, they lose everything. It's hard. Zest and MN3 even pulled ultimates, but it's just too late.
Huge blade there from Stalker. I mean, when you look across the board, massive investment from both sides, and Seoul Dynasty had to win that there. There's a minute left on the clock. There's just simply not much opportunity left to build some of these resources back up before you run out of time. So getting that win means you can get forward, you can go Rampage versus Rampage and take yet another fight where you're going to rely on your, I mean, really anyone on the team to step up and find some kind of opening. And I think Fury may be the one that they're going to go for here.
And this might be a hot take, but I think Fusion should have just lost that fight, not used ultimates, and been in a better economic situation now. Because maybe they'll wish they had that, but they'll have the one ultimate at least to use. It's looking pretty good so far. Smurf survived, so he'll pop out the Rampage. Not quite as good as Fury's, and the Seoul results in just a 1-for-1 trade so far. MN3 ticking down to 5. He didn't actually bleed out, and Fusion have the extra members surviving that they can continue holding. Seoul Dynasty lose the fight with critical time remaining. Less than 10 seconds. A late death on a Stalker. Fitz is going to go towards the Sombra just to enable a touch. Smurf on the ball now. I don't think it's going to work even if they can touch. Fusion have 5 alive, and Seoul Dynasty waiting for respawners. Time runs out here. It's a successful A-point hold. It's a full hold.
I mean, what a turnaround, too, for Fusion. I mean, something that they were so close to achieving on Hollywood. Now they actually get the job done. And remember, despite the fact that this is a 2-0 right now for Dynasty, that last map was dangerously close. I mean, Dynasty, like I said, in that last map in Hollywood, they kind of snuck away with some points that Fusion really could have, with minor changes, shut them down early, and then they clearly, with their attack, probably had the pacing to just take that one away. So now with this hold here, this could be a major point in this series for Fusion. This is probably that potential pivot if there ever was going to be one.
And I think historically as well, when you look across the Fusion's results so far this year, see if Aim God has a... Mary does indeed have a little land. Right, well, as the concert continues, he's been practicing. He looks very focused here. Yeah, I was going to say that historically, this has been one of the better maps for Fusion. They've been very good on Circuit Royale. Nice ending there. Circuit Royale in the history of all their games, and especially in sniper metas where MN3 has been able to play the Widowmaker. In fact, this was one of the pivotal maps in Fusion beating Seoul Dynasty in the MSM qualifiers as well, when MN3 probably had one of the best individual performances that we've seen out of any player so far this season. Seoul Dynasty are obviously going to go for their own spawn camp here. MN3 obviously going to be on that very predictable Ashe that everyone does go for. With Stalker taking down Zest, it'll be Fusion just kind of going back to spawn, waiting it out.
So all the same notions that we had for Fusion, now just flip the mirror around and it's all on Dynasty. You have to make sure that they do get their kills, they do remain stable here and composed. You can't lose a body or else you're going to get backed up despite winning, maybe.
Oh, there's a body. Oh. He finds that body. Dynamite onto Prophet. Aim God traded, but Seoul Dynasty losing one and lose more now. They have to back on out. I think even if Aim God died, Prophet dies and nobody else on Seoul died, Seoul would have technically still lost that spawn hold, right? So they certainly lose a lot more. You lose one of your supports, healing kind of goes in the bin there, and Fusion very early on break out of spawn.
Big time moment here for Seoul Dynasty. They got held on, have to hold this corner down now, have to be basically flawless in your defense of this corner. There's certainly, I think, a silver lining for them. If you're going to hold any point on the map, or sorry, any map this early on, Circuit Royale actually has a very solid point A with this composition because there's great line of sight to use in this room. Smurf can fall back, but still has to be careful.
And Smurf might have to fall back. Look at his HP bar, very, very low here. I believe the shelter have been used. Stalker as well. In a little bit of trouble, but he'll still fight Fix it despite being a low HP. That's incredible from Stalker. That actually takes the sound barrier off the board, and now they can get further kills. Look at this, Stalker's just going buck wild. And the kill feed, 5 and 0 Seoul. They can rush towards the spawn now. This is exactly what Fusion did to Seoul, and now Seoul are doing to Fusion.
In the back of my mind, though, I'm wondering if Fusion might, in the chaos of a fight, potentially say, okay, we might be losing this fight. Go send Fixa over to the point and see if we can drag them away from this spawn hold if we're losing. But it has to get to that point first.
Fury, second down. And got to follow through next. And yeah, look, at this rate, you can't even really send somebody on through. Another way you could do, another way you can do what you're trying to say there is go Tracer or Sombra or something to go like just force a back cap. That's another way to quote unquote win against a spawn camp, but then you sacrifice all the ult charge right Fusion. I don't think they can afford to do that. They're going to go to the rally now, and now the ultimates will get popped from both sides. Overclock from Fitz, looking for targets. Fix up, barely dodging out that last shot. Fitz is kind of struggling to find anything at this moment, and with that Seoul Dynasty, they'll kind of gentleman's agreement back out over. Blaze will come through next. Blaze to be countered up by the sound barriers. Prophet's dead though. This is prime opportunity for Fusion to push on forward, but they're going to trade it out. Both Briggs down. Sound barrier popped by Fixer. Very on towards Fitz. MN3 now popped out 3 versus 3. And Seoul Dynasty, they're going to be on the losing end of that 3 versus 3. Fusion with a brilliant opportunity to push on forward. Seoul should still get one more contest.
It's that same kind of similar situation here. Fusion as well. They're going to have Rampage, they're going to have Blade, and the only thing that they have to worry about is the sound barrier. How can Vindame have the impossible task again of trying to deal with both as their lone support ultimate? It all comes down to this right here.
MN3 now, pulling it through. Smurf took so much damage. He only got Fury as well. Smurf might fall, but Vindame saves him, so the sound barrier. Oh, wait a minute. Fury gets his Rampage cancelled. I think that's the second one that we've seen today. Humongous shot by Smurf, but isn't enough. Seoul Dynasty still only have 2 Zest. The extra blade. You talked about Vindame needing to block out 2 important ultimates. He can only block out the 1, and with that Zest, despite Fury failing on the Rampage, the blade will be enough. Fusion stay alive in the series. The reverse sweep is now officially on.
Interesting dynamic at play there as well, right? Dynasty investing the sound barrier. They don't even block an ultimate with it. They instead use it to actually position themselves more aggressively. They run down Fury and basically cancel that ultimate. Exactly. They run down Fury and take him out of the equation so he can't even use his ult. But then as things wear off, Fusion still has all of those resources available, and it's just too much to contend with, I think, at that stage.
I think when you really break it down as well, in a kind of roundabout way, the sound barrier did block out the Rampage, or at least one of the 2 ultimates, because Smurf gets to stay alive. He walks up, kills Fury, completely denies and cancels the Rampage. So in a roundabout way, that's kind of what the sound barrier does. But then obviously, once the sound barrier is gone, Zest gets to do his job. He gets to pull Blade and pull Fusion through to a map victory that allows them to keep going in the series. Can they get the reverse sweep done? Map number 4 on your screens right after this break. The Philadelphia Fusion keep their heads above water, but now can they survive in the cold as we're about to head over to Toronto? That's right, Seoul Dynasty not going to do Colosseo. And you know what, Fusion, they don't mind going to New Queen Street. They love New Queen Street. It's one of their better maps. They have a great map win rate on this map, but it also does put the pressure on Fusion. If we are going to see a reverse sweep here, X, it is already on, but 2 more maps are required.
Yeah, I think it is definitely interesting. We kind of talked about it during the break a little bit, but now have a better opportunity to kind of expand on it. Yeah, it's really interesting here that we see this map selected, especially given Seoul's... I mean, they did well in Colosseo, especially against the Fusion. I mean, that was a map that they actually wound up taking. Then they took map number 5 and were able to take the series because of it. Yeah, I mean, it was like, what, 100 something to... Exactly, yeah.
To 62.
So you wonder, okay, what are some of the elements in play as to why Seoul would go this direction, especially also, given...
We have a lot of repeating maps here. I was going to say, sorry to cut you off there, but you know, the previous series was Oasis, won by Fusion, this time won by Seoul. Hollywood won by Seoul here. Circuit Royale won by Fusion again. But then Seoul choose Colosseo in that... Actually, did they get to choose? I can't remember. But there's a Colosseo. Whether they chose it or not doesn't matter. But they go to Colosseo, 114 versus 62. They wouldn't have chosen because it's a regular season game. But my point stands. Colosseo was the map they won quite convincingly compared to the Fusion on. But they're actually going to choose to go to New Queen Street here. So we're going to deviate from the pathway of the previous matchup.
Yeah, kind of avoiding the script a little bit here. And we've seen a little bit of that today. We've seen certainly a lot more of the following of the script where... Especially in this series here, Seoul Dynasty, they're here to stay. They're 12-0. This could very well wind up being that same situation as before, where you look at how Fusion has played throughout this entire qualifier, now moving into this tournament. They typically like to punch up. They can play spoiler. They like to take these maps off of teams as well, but sometimes, and I think inevitably, they wind up falling flat. That's why you see their 2-4 record as we're going to be moving into New Queen Street here. And I have concerns for Fusion because I think a lot of people want to see them succeed. They want to see that 2-4 record look obviously a little bit better than what it is because this team is simply, I think, better than a 2-4 record. We're seeing that here. They're playing up to Seoul Dynasty, but on New Queen Street, I think maybe a little bit of confidence gained because, like you said, this is a map that they love to play.
Yeah, they are fantastic on New Queen Street. I mean, their history on this map is, I would say, the 2 best maps are New Queen Street and Circuit Royale. That's been proven in our previous, tournament qualifiers, in those tournaments as well. So Seoul, we'll have to see what their game plan is going to be. Obviously, we have the North American NA side of the Summer Showdown tournament happening live in Toronto. That will be happening later today as well. We will go to Toronto virtually here for our Summer Showdown in the Eastern Division as the Seoul Dynasty roll out with the Sojourn. No more Fitz Ash. Now, previously, Ash wouldn't have a lot of game playtime here, but now it's like, before we talk about that, Seoul just get the opening 2 first bloods in very quick fashion. Fitz will respond onto 1, but at this stage, yeah, Seoul Dynasty are routed. They will probably lose everybody here if they're not too careful. It doesn't look like they will be able to get very many members away. Profit to at least boot Fury back. And yeah, it is Sojourn time. Ash gets flanked a bit too hard here, is what I was about to say.
I think with those picks, though, from the Fusion, this means that they can't actually follow this payload all the way forward. Looks like they got everybody back. I think they did taxi everybody. So now they just completely nix my point. So with these taxis, they can actually push forward. Still, though, this is a map type where a lot of teams like to kind of fall back and play more neutral. Use the disengage, try to get a better position to fight from, but Zest just loves playing aggressive, so never mind.
Yeah, they found the damage on the Smurf, and now we'll find the execution on Smurf as well. That's the prime target. You want to get down. Tank is gone for the Seoul Dynasty. Supports to follow next. Stalker as well on the list. Aim God showing the kill feed. 3 kills for Aim God on the Brigadier. And all allow Fusion to walk further forward. But you have to be very mindful of the fact that Fitz killing Fury makes a lot of difference here, because as Seoul Dynasty get respawners, I think Fusion have to back out.
Yeah, this is the point I was actually going to make initially, but that taxi just helped Fusion get into position. Now, maybe not as much. I think they're going to have to go ahead and disengage like you talked about. They do just that. And I think priority there for Dynasty was making sure that they did that. They pushed Fusion off before the bot actually made it to the objective, because then they get better spawns, and that certainly plays nicer into Fusion's ability to keep progressing this bot forward.
If it was any other member, maybe that would have been fine. Zest actually got booed back there. I think it might have been from the flail. In either case, the kills do still come on through. Not from Zest, but Fixer gets one. Now it's to Stalker's Blade to come on through, and his Blade has just been amazing so far. He already had Zest down early. Blade collects through. That's, 3 kills so far in this fight. Looking for number 4. Will probably get it. Prophet steals it. Doesn't matter. Stalker lives, and that's the most important part. Seoul Dynasty don't lose a single player in that fight, meaning that they can now push on through very aggressively without having to give up any sort of space. And they'll get their first bit of meterage now.
One of the things I love about this map too, I don't know about in the regions you cover, but in the regions I cover, this is a map that could easily turn on its head on a dime. I mean, instantly. You can see a team have like 70 meters difference, and that's able to be come back from on this map. Momentum is certainly a factor, maybe a little bit even more so than Colosseo, but Seoul Dynasty need to get through Fusion to get there.
I'll tell you what here, it's the region I cover is just Asia, it's APAC, it's all these kind of deep in here. And it's going to be the 2 Jungle Queens falling over nice and early. M3 does find some value on that overclock, and dare I say finds a little bit more now. Double support ult is being popped by both ends. They've all but dissipated now. M3 still in the mix, 1 versus 1 against Stalker, and he wins that one so clean from M3. Fitz will get the revenge. And as the dust settles, Fusion should be coming out ahead. Okay, Fitz is just kind of popping off over there. He loses the fight. Soul loses the fight, but Fitz gets the extra points for style.
Yeah, definitely. I think we were inevitably going to say that about M3, but the fact that he did get that kill onto Stalker, it meant that Fusion could stabilize long enough to just neutralize the fight. I mean, completely neutralize. Nobody really got much ground at all, and it's just kind of a reset here. Fusion diving in though.
Now is the Rampage, gets 2. I think there's a little bit of disengage from Seoul Dynasty attempted. They're trying to get away now, but they get 2 kills. I mean, on the exit entirely. I mean, Fusion trying to go on in off the Rampage, and Seoul Dynasty getting kills as they press S rather. Now they're pressing W. M3 gets 1. Prophet does have to respawn, and we'll have to get taxied back by Vindane, but that is otherwise a very clean fight. They just disengage from the Rampage so well.
It's also a good amount of time for them to get this taxi. You could see them working their way back over. It's all about timing here. Certainly, Dynasty are going to have to back off away from this position, but if Fusion are smart, I think they're going to go fast here. Instead, they do notice that Prophet and Vinde make their way back, so buy their time just a little bit, but not for much longer.
Rampage onto 1, and that's kind of been the specialty so far for Smurf. You can only really get 1 on the Rampage. It'll be enough. It's Fury for Fitz. I think that's a better trade for the Seoul Dynasty, but they don't feel confident about it. They lost their damage. They have a tank available. Fusion trying to press the issue here. Fusion are going in. Zest pulls Blade. He wants some kills. He wants specifically Smurf down. He's low HP though. The Zest has to be so careful. Finally gets killed onto Vinde, but wasn't Smurf. Smurf got taken down by Fixer. And now the Philadelphia Fusion, 3 versus 2. They have technically won this one, but Stalker still gets a couple of important kills, slowing things down.
I think Stalker wants to use the Blade pretty aggressively here, because, again, ult tracking should be at least a degree easier in Overwatch 2, but you can see with Stalker in this position, knowing full well that they probably are just a little bit ahead of the Fusion with those support ults, they can go and just dive right in on top of them.
Speaking of ahead, it's Fury pushing way past the statue. You can see he was out of line of sight of his supports entirely, so yeah, it does cost him 2 ultimates to do so, but it's a second member picked up now, and maybe that is worth it for the Seoul Dynasty. I think by the time Zest comes back and Fusion do regroup, they will be able to stop this payload from capping, but Seoul Dynasty spending 2 ultimates there. It was expensive.
I think with Dynasty though, I think they're comfortable with pushing this where they can get it almost to equal territory up near that 50 mark, and now see if they can pull some more ultimates. They might lose the fight, but if they can pull resources, that's key.
Double support ultimates available for Fusion though, and Fitz is down to MN3, so this is important. Now Fusion have the lead going further forward. Vindane will find a sound barrier, but chooses not to use it because everybody is dead. MN3 and Zest. MN3 in fact gets 4 in that fight. The X was stolen by Zest, but it's okay. Fusion, they get 5 alive, and that's important. They are going for the cap. MN3 has already pushed deep into Seoul territory, not towards their spawn, but very much holding tight angles here as the payload comes around. Expecting Seoul to take a quick fight here.
That they do. They're kind of diving forward, utilizing some of their cooldowns initially, but watch for those shouts. Good news here is that this is kind of neutral territory, right? 3 minutes, both the teams very close. So, I mean, all these ults are kind of right in line with one another. more or less as well. So neither team wants to make a mistake here because both of these squads are capable of exploiting these weaknesses. You don't want to overextend. You don't want to utilize that shout too early and get caught out.
I think this is a very pivotal fight, as we have a 3-meter gap between the teams. Fusion are also in position that if they win this fight, they will get the checkpoint. Super important assist on 1 HP. That was very critical for us to survive that, because Fusion would have been pushed back. They would have to disengage if Zest dies. Now the shouts are being expended. Fury, though, what is that? Is that a solo kill from Smurf? Was Fury too far forward? Unknown how he dies there, but that is Seoul Dynasty prime positioning now to get a big cleanup here. I'm not expecting Fusion to burn ultimates. In fact, Dynasty themselves will also not burn ultimates, but they are going to get a number of frags. If Fusion try to throw bodies at Seoul, any sort of trade there would have slowed down Seoul, but Seoul get 5 alive. They push on through.
5 alive, that's the name of the game here, especially on New Queen Street, where there's just so much distance to cover, and a lot of it is just very open, singular lanes, right? That's the key. But Philadelphia Fusion, they're quick on the draw. They're going to be able to contest this before any progress really is made by the Dynasty.
Oh my god, that was very close. You cannot allow the puck to come on through if you are Philadelphia Fusion, but here we go. Blades coming on through, pretty good so far. Fury will catch 2 on the rampage, and now Smurf to respond to the opposite end. Both DPSs have been caught, but Fixer and Inventory still getting the kills. It doesn't matter that they've been antied out. Fury's still alive. He's been saved by his own shout. He's very hard to kill, and M3 is still doing damage while all of that is happening. That was a very tight fight to get through. It looked like Smurf might have been able to turn it around, but Fusion refused to lose.
That was insane. I mean, as much as that last fight should have been the pivotal one to look at, this fight that just transpired, probably even more so. Fusion come away with that one. Also, very low on HP. None of those targets could get killed, and now it's all about picks. M3 versus Fitz. Who can win out?
Oh! Profit down to Fixer. That Fixer's been active so far. M3 even more active. Smurf trying to get away. Zest cleans him up. There was a headshot, rather. I think a headshot maybe coming through from the rail. It's enough for Zest to get the cleanup, and the cap comes on through. That is so important for the Philly Fusion. They have a brilliant checkpoint now to work through, and even more distance about to be gained. That 3-meter gap now extends to beyond 10, maybe 15 and 20 to come up as well. Seoul Dynasty could be losing this map. Now this is looking pretty poor from Seoul and Philly on the victory path. 30 or so seconds remain.
Still interesting that both these teams very similar timings in terms of their ults, so it's just going to be head-to-head for these last couple of fights. Potentially, it might even be the last one right here. 30 seconds left on the clock.
Smurf, low HP. Fitz will get the first kill, though. It's a 1-for-1 so far. Do you value MN3 or Smurf? But I'm going to say, Fitz and Profit, though, that's something you can't afford to lose if you are the Seoul Dynasty. And this is where the Philly Fusion, time, not great, but they win the fight. They can continue pushing. Seoul Dynasty backs against the wall. The deficit grows further here, Rex. I mean, even if Seoul win this fight and start pushing, how can they catch up?
Yeah, going to take multiple fights back to back to back, and nobody.
Yeah, well, they can't even touch.
Actually, there.
They can't even touch. Fusion push forward. They'll push forward towards the spawn, and the Seoul Dynasty cannot even touch. We talked about how much of a risk it was for Seoul to take Fusion to one of their best maps on New Queen Street. Coliseum was open, available to pick for Seoul Dynasty. They chose to stay away from Coliseum. They won against Philly Fusion on Coliseum by a wide margin, might I add. We remember that scoreline. And here, a little bit of hubris maybe. They get punished. Fusion, a brilliant win that continues the possibility of a reverse sweep. We went to 5 maps between these two teams in the Week 18 game. We will once again go to 5 maps, so don't you go anywhere. The final map to decide it all comes up after this break. What if Seoul Dynasty wanted to win, but MN3, the Tiger Slayer, said no? New Queen Street, a brilliant map, now goes the way of the Philadelphia Fusion, chosen, by the way, by the Seoul Dynasty. And we talked about the possibility of reverse sweep here, X. Well, it is officially on the cards with 2 maps locked up by the Philly Fusion.
Yeah, now we get to that stage where Dynasty, it's their turn to take that map selection yet again here. Obviously didn't go all too well for them in that last map, but potentially now moving into a control. Obviously, they had the upper hand when we first started this series, but Philly Fusion, I feel like they've adapted pretty well right now to what's been going on. They certainly look like they have more firepower. There's more lethality there as well. And as close as Hollywood looked, it felt like, I mean, Fusion has like played up to Seoul Dynasty, but now it feels like there's maybe a little bit of some distance being gained by Fusion in this series. So Seoul Dynasty definitely have to step up and make something happen quick.
And here's the other opposite end of that coin as well, Herix, is I would have to say to temper expectations for Fusion here, because map 5s have been very 50-50 for the Fusion in the past. They've won plenty of map 5s, they've also lost plenty of map 5s. Fusion can reverse sweep, but they've also been reverse swept in the past, so, you know, it's kind of anything can go. And I want to specifically pay attention to map selection being important for a team like the Fusion, because the 2 maps they've won in this series, again, I would have to reiterate, are the 2 best maps for the Fusion. New Queen Street, Circuit Royale, have historically this entire year been their most successful 2 maps for the Fusion, so I don't think it's crazy that they did win these 2 maps. Now we go towards Oasis. As a reminder, Oasis was the map that Philly Fusion 2-0'd versus Seoul Dynasty in that Week 18 game. So they actually beat Seoul here. Seoul picked this map. Just to be clear, Seoul have chosen Oasis. They did lose Oasis to Fusion. They beat Fusion on Busan, albeit by only a 2-1 scoreline. But, this one's hard for me to call here, X. Because I feel like Philly have won here before, but it's still hard to like, grasp it, you know?
Yeah, I think I do have at least a little bit, a hint of a silver lining here. I think obviously this is fresh on Dynasty's minds. They probably looked at that very recently, watched it in film, broke it down, figured out, okay, what needed to change from there. I think obviously Philly Fusion probably did very much the same, but there's more to work off of for Dynasty because they're the ones that took the L there. Maybe they feel like what they figured out is enough for them to get out on top.
Let's see if there's going to be a VHS diff today, as many lessons to be learned for the Seoul Dynasty. Okay. It's a risky one. It's a tricky one. Seoul have been taking the Fusion to some of the good maps today. Stalker will take down MN3 though. And this could be a continuation of frags coming on through. It indeed is. Profit on to fix it, and that'll be the cleanup. Could be a very, very good cleanup here as well. I believe 5 kills to 0. If Zest falls, yep, there it is. 5 on the board, 0 for the Fusion.
5 alive, as you'd like to say, at least on New Queen Street, but while here certainly it doesn't necessarily help you, position aggressively and get some bot coverage, at least probably it allows you to maintain... Yeah, definitely I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't kind of do that. I mean, that was a pitfall that Charge fell into earlier on this map specifically, not this sub map necessarily, but definitely something I think you want to stay away from as much as you can. Certainly take your advantages, but not all the way to the spawn doors. Now, though, Seoul Dynasty talking about advantages, already up over 35%. And on top of that, looking for some picks onto Fury, who's very low. They can't press forward without him getting stabilized.
And I'm looking at the ultimate charge there as well, but maybe it doesn't matter if MN3 could just get the opening frag with the rail of the Smurf. And Smurf, is, the past couple of maps, has struggled a little bit here for the Seoul Dynasty. Seoul, though, don't give up the point. They're actually still there. It's a struggle for the Fusion to actually cap this one over. Seoul Dynasty are just very carefully juggling aggro. In the middle of juggling aggro, Fitz kills Fixer. So Fusion, they like kind of win the fight by killing Smurf, and now it's a 1-for-1 trade. Neither team has a Lucio alive. Fusion did actually cap, got the flip on over. At least Seoul isn't getting more points on the cap now, but if they can heal Stalker up, the Blade's going to be available. That will open the fight.
And if I'm Dynasty as well, I'm just allowing the Lucios to come back into the fight because I need to reset. We use Shout. Gotta make sure that you have that available. You don't want to press into a fight without that cooldown available. Well, guess what? Now it is. So is the Blade for Stalker.
And Seoul just walk on up. They have just entirely walked through this point now, trying to get this cap going forward. Stalker pulls play. There's no responses. MN3 gets cut up. He's a very important member to get down early. It's a lot of the firepower gone. Zest can pull his own play, but it's a 4 versus 5. Fury going down means that Zest now has to hold, as well as Fixer and Aim God just trying to delay as long as possible. Fixer giving his life away for it. And Seoul will get the flip and do not allow Fury to overtake in percentage points.
I think delaying actually was the key for Dynasty. Start that fight off. Like I said, just having the ability to wait out that cooldown, have the Shout available, have your Lucio available as well. You don't even utilize too many resources outside of that. You just invest the Blade, you get the flip. Now you're at 75%, and you start to go 1-to-1. See if you can steal a fight away by getting an early pick, but you have to keep Smurf alive.
Okay, Zest, it says time to go now. It's double support ultimates available for the Seoul Dynasty. They actually fall Rally first. Rally now responded to by Aingod, and Zest cannot get through all the shield. He cannot get through the HP. Sound Barrier is now in position to block out the Rampages. First one coming up through Fitz, saved by the Sound Barrier. Very important there. MN3, the overclock is looking for damage, and Smurf finally gets a beautiful Rampage. 4 members caught, and the Sound Barrier is gone. This is opportunity now. Seoul getting so much work done off the back of that Rampage, and they're going to win the fight. They're at 84%. The flip did come up through. Fusion stole the cap, but Seoul Dynasty might steal away this round.
Really good play there from Fusion. They at least afford themselves one more fight. And you look at Dynasty, well, they don't have any ults. Certainly Fusion feeling very much the same, and it may even come down with 12 seconds left now to whether or not Fusion can touch, and I think that's going to fall firmly
Tracer
on Zest's shoulders to try to get the Tracer there and make sure that they still have recall, ideally, to be able to continue this fight. And I think that they did actually manage to hold on to that cooldown.
It can be hard to hold on to that, given when you touch, you're in a lot of trouble there, so you might have to recall early. In fact, Zest will do his best now to try and get that cooldown back if it has been used. Proper save by the commanding Shout there. Seoul Dynasty, low HP, got a couple of members there. Fixer runs up to Fitz and collects him down. Stalker trades on the Fury. It's a 1-for-1 so far. Stalker gets further kills here. Stalker's just doing so much work with Seoul Dynasty. Currently, 3 kills. Both the supports down. Pulls the Blade off the back of it. Hunts down MN3. Zest is the only one alive, and well, the ace might not be there, but Seoul, they'll take the win regardless.
Huge win there for Stalkers especially, but Dynasty will take it as a whole, as a collective unit. Breathe a sigh of relief, because it felt like Fusion was just continuing to kind of breathe down their necks in spite of the position that Dynasty was in. And now we transition over into our next sub-map here, and Seoul Dynasty yet again with a lead, but one that I don't think that they can feel necessarily overly comfortable with, because remember, Fusion loves to do this. When they are down and it feels like they're out, they surprise you every single time, it feels like.
Can I surprise you with a stat line really quickly before we get into this round? Here, the kills or deaths between the two teams, Seoul Dynasty versus Fusion, 19-3. That's right, Fusion only got 3 final blows in an entire round. I don't know what percentage points they had on the cap, but it's a lot given they only had 3 final blows. Stalker and Prophet haven't even died yet. They're still deathless. So, and well, that continues now as Zest goes down. It's 20-3. Seoul Dynasty looking like they want to dominate here. Fury could be in trouble next, and we saw Seoul Dynasty just run into Philly Fusion on that first run at University and clean them up 5-0, and it's looking like it'll happen again. Nobody on...
Increasingly difficult now for the Philly Fusion, but not out of it just yet. Just like in this series, they fought their way back into a map number 5. They could certainly do the same for round number 3, but after a neutral fight win for Dynasty, where they're going to have an early rally, potentially, if they can win this next fight. But look at Zest's position. He's worked his way around. He's flanking behind them.
Has to be careful though, because his team, if it's too far away, he's not going to be able to be supported. And despite the flank and despite all the cuteness of that, Zest will just get the 1 kill. So at least a trade, Vindane for Fixer. You take that Lucio for Lucio. Very low HP means that Fusion do have to back on out. And with that, Seoul Dynasty have a chance to get Vindane back into action. Fusion don't want to push without Fixer. We're back into a 5v5.
40% now for Dynasty Fusion. I mean, I don't want to say running out of time, but certainly time is against them. But they are now looking for Stalker.
Stalker got low there, but Prophet pulls the rally first. Fury is again very low HP. He is again going to be taken down. Get Prophet staying alive. It's more kills coming from Seoul. When is Fusion got to get a single final blow? I think they got maybe one. No, they did get one. They got Vindane down, so they've gone from 3 to 4 here. We're improving.
It's going to have to find a lot more than that. And unfortunately for them, Stalker's going to have to blade in this next fight. They're going to probably have Rally there, but oftentimes Rally, even with a shout layered over the top of it, is simply not enough. So Fixa, burden is on you. Can you get something done and maybe even just displace Stalker to try to limit and mitigate this blade?
Okay, well, Stalker can definitely get a lot done here. It's looking pretty decent so far. Fixer gets a kill. That's a big shutdown on Stalker. That's exactly what you need from the Philly side. Fury low HP. Is there going to be a sound barrier from Fixer? Nope, doesn't need it. Zest and Fixer will get all the kills regardless of what the Seoul Dynasty want to do. Shutting down both Fixer and Stalker is so important. And even more important than that, Fusion get on the board big time. They got 5 kills there. The entire Seoul Dynasty wiped out.
Gotta be pretty much perfect here, though, from here on out. And Fusion certainly a team capable of doing just that. Obviously, they have a slight advantage in economy. The fact that MN3, one of their, I think, pivotal players, critical players, does have Overclock coming up, might fall to that to see if Fusion can sustain here.
And the Rampages have been very mixed as well from both sides. Fury probably has had the better Rampages so far. Smurf, though, had a brilliant one on New Queen Street. Well, not New Queen Street, on University. So here we go, Rampage is coming on through. 5 caught on the side of Seoul Dynasty. Vindane couldn't do so much to keep them alive. Smurf tries to pull on through. He's trying to clutch now, but it's now a 3v5 clutch. At least they might get aim god. They do. Fixes to fall following that, but Smurf on his lonesome. You can't do more. It's a late Rampage. It looks okay, but you don't have the players alive to capitalize on killing aim god and Fixer.
And that might have given away what could have been a gift for them. I mean, think about it. Philly Fusion, you look at their economy, it is destitute. They are barren out there. And if you talk about having a rally and a Rampage advantage going into the next fight, man, that could have been almost a gimme. Now Seoul Dynasty going to have to work a little bit hard for this.
Oh, and they can't rally now. It's going to be Prophet taken down, right? So they just have less to work through in Fusion. They can definitely win this map and the round, rather, to continue the map on to number 3. City Center comes up next, and we're on the precipice of it. 20% away.
Rally now finally coming up for Prophet. They caught him in the last fight. Gonna have to do so again as Philly Fusion still very much building. But this looks to be, I mean, really the final fight of this round. Seoul, they're looking to end it here. They don't want to go to a round number 3.
And M3 and Zest are low. Fury being caught by a lot of damage. There's all Fury in the corner. They caught Fury in the corner. That could be the map. That could be the entire series going away. Seoul Dynasty have another frag. Fusion, no responses. They don't have a single kill here. They're invisible. M3 and Zest to hold down the fort. They're trying their best, but Smurf says no. Seoul say no. They deny the reverse sweep, and they will get the series done to face the Shanghai Dragons in the upper bracket final.
Huge win, Dynasty. Unfortunate for Fusion, especially their fans too, going on yet another wild ride, and you can see it on their faces. I would feel very much the same way. I mean, going that 5-map set again. I mean, how many times has it been this stage alone that we see them get here? And sometimes they succeed, sometimes they fall a little bit short. Here it was the latter, but Dynasty again establishing as one of the top 2 teams here, but I think Charge and Fusion both look pretty solid still.
And it's crazy that we kind of repeat the same scorelines from the qualifier as well, which is to say that Shanghai 3-0 Charge as they did in the qualifier, and then Seoul Dynasty, with a lot of turmoil, barely get a 3-2 victory versus Fusion, but we sort of repeat the same scoreline again, albeit this time in a lot more dangerous fashion. I think for both teams in a way, because you're Seoul, you have a 2-0 lead. That's quite dangerous for the Fusion. but then Fusion get another 2 maps and start a reverse sweep. That's quite dangerous for the Seoul Dynasty. I think both teams have a lot to take away from this game in terms of it not being quite comfortable with your Fusion. I mean, it just is so close. You talk about a wild ride here. This is Mr. Fusion's wild ride, right? You have two maps coming in to kind of making you believe in the reverse sweep, but then on map number 5, it just falls apart.
Yeah, unfortunate for Fusion, but I think good news for Dynasty because some of the things that are working really well for them continue to work. And one of those things is Stalker going to be the player of the match for this series. And I think rightfully so, right? Because when you look at who was making a massive difference throughout this series, time and time again, it was Stalker. It was those blades, finding the kills, again, in a meta where there's so many defensive utilities, still finding just 3Ks, 4Ks at that level of consistency. That's what separates. And,
you know, even winning in a big way on the maps they lost as well. Stalker putting up big numbers, even on Circuit, even on New Queen Street. And it's a very interesting dichotomy here between him and Zest, because you have a situation where Zest has kind of been, you know, popping off and lauded as one of the best, you know, players, just generally speaking, from APAC the entire way through. You know, a player that you have to be considerate of in the Rookie of the Year discussion. However, I think today specifically, Stalker had Zest's number. You know, there were a number of maps where Zest honestly could have done a lot more. It seemed maybe out of character that Zest was a bit quiet there. Stalker, no bad performances. All 5 maps, he stood up, he stood tall, he outperformed his counterpart in Zest, and he comes in so late in the season as well. I mean, this guy barely played in the first 2 stages. He played a lot more in Mid-Season Madness. Now he's getting a full starting role on the team in Summer Showdown, and kind of proving why he is still a player that you have to fear. He is so much of a strong force on the Seoul Dynasty roster. So many huge moments today.
Yeah, definitely come a long way. A journey himself as well, since the first time that I remember seeing him all the way back when I was casting in Korea. I think that was 2019. Stalker playing. Yeah, I mean, it's been a journey, but one that I think he's finding some success on, because obviously, you now see a team moving forward into the winners finals. Yes, you have to take on Shanghai Dragons, but at least for now, you can breathe a sigh of relief and say, look, we made it a step forward. Now let's see what we can do against what has been a pretty indomitable team, one that is very hard to surpass, but hey, maybe Seoul can pull it out.
Well, Herix, it's been good having you on the Overwatch League. Congratulations on your official debut here, especially in the Summer Showdown tournament as well, but that will do it for the day. We have closed up our first opening round of matches. Congratulations to both Seoul and Shanghai for going on through to the winners bracket final now. We'll have to come back tomorrow to see how that match goes, as well as the Guangzhou Charge versus Philadelphia Fusion game in the elimination side down the lower bracket. Somebody is going to have to go home, but that does it for the day. We'll see you tomorrow for more Summer Showdown, and also, if you're willing to stay awake, NA coming up soon as well, live in Toronto. We'll see you then.